Hi there, my Vixens. April Roberts here. On this week of the Vixen Voice, we are going to be digging into pillar number 4 of Vixen Gathering Concepts. So today is one of everyone's favorite topics: how to set, maintain, and keep your boundaries. So, just a friendly reminder, pillar 4 of the Vixen Gathering is actually boundaries and self love. I think that creating and maintaining strong boundaries is a key component to self love. But this week, we're just going to stick to boundaries. And next week, tune in because we are going to practice writing a love letter to yourself. So we will dig into self love next week. Awesome. I'm so glad you're here with me for this boundaries conversation. Boundaries are so important. And for me, it's so interesting because when I look back over my life, I feel like at 18, I had great boundaries, and somehow responsibility, life, living, owning businesses, working in different environments. I don't know. It kind of, I don't want to say it beat the boundaries out of me, but maybe it cultivated the boundaries out of me. And so I actually had to relearn this concept, and I started in 2019. I was so grateful for that journey. I don't know about you, but I believe lessons come if we're looking for them when we need them. And boy, did I need boundaries going into 2020, being a business owner and a financial advisor. Also, self love and self care concepts became incredibly important that year. But again, we'll talk about those next week. And then after that, when I decided to sell my business and just different endeavors I had going on, boundaries became more and more important, like setting a strong boundary. And I don't know about you, but for me, I wanted to set those boundaries gracefully. I will share it first. I did not set them gracefully. Probably prior to 2019, I didn't set them gracefully. Probably more like getting triggered and setting a boundary or defending myself and setting a boundary. And so the beautiful lesson was, I had a spiritual coach. You've heard me talk about it a lot, and he actually helped me lay boundaries. And so it was a much more graceful, aligned version of boundaries that I felt better about and felt good about. And that's important to me. We talked about core values before. If you missed that episode, please go listen. I think knowing your personal core values are such an important hack to making good decisions, setting good boundaries, time and energy management, and also to self-love. So check that episode. It was a few weeks ago, on personal core values, and you want to check those out and get yours down if you don't have them. But my personal core values, which by the way came about in 2020, I did this exercise, are alignment, affection, and adventure. So obviously, I need my behavior aligned with my purpose. And second is affection. So, when I had to like pound my fist to set boundaries, I don't know about you, but that doesn't feel great, right? And the trick to boundaries is we are normally setting them with people we care about. So we're normally setting them with people we want to keep in our lives, because if we didn't want you in our lives, we would probably just ghost you. Let's be honest. So you're normally setting a boundary either because you have to keep this person in your life. Maybe they're a coworker and you don't want to have a miserable existence, or it's a family member or someone you love and you want to keep them in your life. So I felt that learning how to set graceful boundaries was huge for me. It transformed my life. Today, I'm going to walk you through that framework that I developed. Again, nothing's perfect. You don't have to stick exactly to this, but if you're new at setting graceful boundaries, it could be good. Just run with this framework to begin with, and then see what feels comfortable to you and not, and then you can make it your own, if that makes sense. And I was listening to Amy Porterfield. She had a great episode on boundaries on her podcast. And she said that setting boundaries is like being a toddler starting to walk. And most of you have toddlers, have had toddlers, or at least have interacted with toddlers. Think about it. if every time they fell down while trying to walk, if they never got back up again, their life would be severely impacted. I feel that same way about setting boundaries. I think it's really important that we learn the skill, and we're gonna fall down. We're not gonna do it great at the beginning. And so we really wanna take that time to think, okay, how do I set a boundary? Like, how do I know to set a boundary? How do I implement it? And then also, how do I maintain it after the fact? So we're going to talk about that this week. And actually, next week, what I'd like to talk about instead of self-love first is how to have difficult conversations. So it's really a continuation of this boundaries conversation. And it teaches you how to reflect afterwards in a way that you don't beat yourself up, but you build yourself up, right? I think that's incredibly important as well, to set a successful boundary. So we'll cover that next week. And the following week, I promise you, we'll do that love letter to yourself. Please, I invite you to do that. One of the greatest gifts a mentor of mine gave me is she shared after her divorce how she took herself on dates. And then I started taking myself on dates, and it's just, a beautiful experience. And, if you're listening, you believe in a higher force. I mean, I personally believe in God, whatever you want to call the higher being that runs our life. You have to think about, we are God's greatest creation. And if we don't love ourselves, what's that saying, right? So we'll get to self-love later, but boundaries are so important to self-love. So we're going to kind of dig in. And today what I'm going to do is walk you through my framework. Again, I do master classes on this. We do small group coaching just on boundaries. It's part of my mastermind. I always work on this with one-to-one clients. So if you'd like to dive deeper on boundaries, just reach out to me or my team. We'd love to chat with you about this. So before we get started, boundaries isn't super fun to talk about. And so I find when we're learning a difficult skill or setting a new goal, it's really important to have purpose and intention behind it. So what I'd like you to do is I invite you to just kind of, relax. Hopefully you're relaxed listening to this podcast. Sit back, really get into your body. Take a couple of deep breaths if you want to, and really just feel your body. So let's just take a little bit of time and do that. And when you feel relaxed, when you feel fully present, I invite you to close your eyes. And what I want you to do is imagine. We all set goals, right? We all have things we want to do. But sometimes we don't think about how we show up or how the interactions in our life occur. So I'd like to invite you to keep your eyes closed and be really intentional about visualizing what your ideal interactions look like. So if you can imagine a day or a week, the rest of this year, a month, if you could flow through the day and have ideal interactions, I want you to envision that. And when you get a clear picture, you'll be surprised. It often comes quickly. Open your eyes. I hope you have a notepad handy, and just jot down some notes for yourself so that you remember this vision. I feel that to have an ideal interaction, we really have to understand how to gracefully set boundaries and have conversations. So one thing I often get asked is, hey, April, why do I need to set boundaries? And this is a great question. I like to say you're setting boundaries to protect something, right? And next week when we do difficult conversations, I'm going to challenge you. What are you protecting? So maybe you're protecting yourself and who and what is important to you. Maybe you're trying to keep people and things you love, care about, and want in your lives. We talked about that, right? I mean, often boundaries come in with our parents as we get older, right? So how are you setting that boundary? Because obviously your parents are important to you, but you can't be triggered in every conversation with them. And maybe for you, it's not your parents. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a neighbor, right? But who is that person that you want to keep in your life? And the last reason I say that we set boundaries is to avoid FOMO, fear of missing out, and to focus. So, really, if you think about it, there are seasons of our life, right? If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a stay at home mom, if whatever you're coming here listening to, I guarantee there's periods of your life where you have more on your plate than others, right? And intentionally on your plate, not just busy, but maybe you're launching something new at work. Maybe it's time to get the kids back to school, right? If you work for someone else, maybe you have a big deadline. In these periods, you probably need stronger boundaries than you do the rest of your life. And it's really to protect you from your own human tendencies and also to give you a framework for conversing with others. And if I can, I'd like to go back to protecting yourself and who and what is important to you. So again, when I say yourself, this could be your values and your goals. Do you see why having personal core values is so important? Because it often allows you to name what you're protecting. And if you have goals in your life, if you have priorities, this is what you're protecting as well. And who is and what is important to you is sometimes you're protecting your family. Sometimes you're protecting a coworker, right? Sometimes you're protecting someone else you love or care about. So I think it becomes really important to understand why you're setting a boundary. And so these are all the reasons that we might set boundaries. The next thing we want to talk about is what to protect. So again, why are you setting the boundary and what are you trying to protect? So you might be protecting your confidence, your time, your energy. And by the way, your confidence is so critically important to a good life. That's feeling good about yourself, right? So you definitely want to protect your confidence, your time, your energy. You might need to be protecting your core values or your goals, like we talked about. And the third thing is your family and others. So again, this is a little bit of repeat of what we talked about, but really get to why you're setting the boundary and what you're protecting. And here's a couple of what I call pro hacks, so little tips. Number one, if you're feeling resentment, that is normally a key sign that a boundary needs to be set in place, right? And so my coach challenged me on this even more. He said, okay, you got to resentment. You knew you had to set a boundary, but I want you to think back to the beginning. And the beginning was the first time this person had stressed me out, right? So anytime you're getting triggered, you're getting stressed out, you really want to try to keep yourself from going to resentment. But again, we're human beings. We're not perfect. We often get to resentment before we set the boundaries. So if you're feeling resentment, take some time and think, hey, do I need to set a boundary? Why do I need to set a boundary? And what am I trying to protect? And then my next pro hack is know your personal core values. I can't tell you how often I have this conversation with clients, friends, family members, and they want me to guide them on a boundary. And when we get down to it, they're really protecting a core value of theirs. I had one team member that peace was really important to her, and she had someone in her life always raising their voice to her. That triggered her every time. It was violating her core value of peace, right? This was someone she wanted in her life, and so she had to figure out how to have that conversation. Sometimes it's respect for others. I've had that come up. So really just knowing your core values, I can't tell you how important. In fact, in the show notes, we're going to drop the link to my core values worksheet. If you haven't done that, I really encourage you, listen to that episode, do the worksheet. If you still need some help, reach out to me or my team. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Third is how to set boundaries. So how am I going to do this, right? And here's the key too. Remember that one of the things you might be protecting is your time, energy, or confidence. This goes into time management. So I love to talk about time boundaries. You really have to set that standard. When I'm at work, am I available to my family? To whom and in what circumstances, right? When I'm having dinner with my family at night, am I available for work? To whom and under what circumstances? I'd really encourage you at that family time not to be available to other people. But again, this is your life. Just think at different times of the day, who are you available to and how, right? So, how to set boundaries when it comes to time is, when am I available? The second one is, for whom am I available? And if you want to write these down, I'd love for you to journal about it tonight or in the morning and think it through. And the third thing is, what is the best way to reach me, right? So maybe you're available during the day to your family for emergencies via phone, right? Maybe you're available to coworkers via a messaging channel at work, but not email because you don't want your inbox clogged. Now, most work environments today have a communication policy. If you own a business, I really encourage this. My team and I cut down so much on our inbox when we went to using Slack full time for inter office communications. We do not email each other. So that really saved us a lot of time and energy. And you also have to set that expectation of when you're going to answer it, right? I personally on my calendar have an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening where I check emails, I check Slack, I check Asana, all these things, because in the morning I plan my day, and before, I shut down, I want to make sure there are no fires that I need to put out. So my team knows if they need me during that time, and it's really important, they have to communicate with me in a certain way. So I really challenge you to think about time boundaries and what you can do. And I guarantee as you're listening to this, because I've done many small group coaching on this where people share in one-on-one clients, something always pops in your mind, right? A situation, a person, someone that you need to protect yourself from. So if that happens, write down these questions, re-listen to the episode. You'll have the script below, and go through each of these questions for whatever popped up in your mind so that you are prepared to have this conversation. So here's how you do it. And I was coaching this on a masterclass, and one woman said, "Oh, I've heard of this before, but it sounds very inauthentic to me." Look, this is not an easy thing to do. The better prepared you are going into the conversation, the better the conversation's going to be. So what I offer you is to steal this framework and use it and then make it your own. And actually, after I explained it deeper in that coaching, that same woman said, "Oh, I actually love this. I'm going to use it," right? So what's really important is you want to be authentic, you want to be open, you want to be vulnerable, and you want to be present in this conversation, because you really don't know what's going on with the other person and maybe why they're stepping on your boundaries, okay? So my pro hack number one is learn the sandwich conversation. And I actually learned this from one of my team members years ago, I think in like 2014. And we utilized it. She led one of my teams at my financial firm. We utilized this when we had to have difficult conversations with our team members. And I've really adapted it to all difficult conversations in my life. So the sandwich conversation, you start positive, you put the zingers in the middle, the important bullet points, and you end positive. You can keep it that simple, right? But I really think the key here is the more love you go in with. Remember, this is someone we want to keep in our life, the better the conversation's going to go. So, I actually was invited to a mastermind for a group of realtors to talk about boundaries. And we went through this conversation, and they were talking about how sometimes other realtors scream at them on the phone. And I was just like, if you're not in that type of environment or profession, you can't imagine being screamed at on the phone, right? And so I was just like, I don't see why you would have to stay in that conversation. You could gracefully exit from that conversation or try to bring them down using the sandwich method and really set that boundary. So, let's say that the person, the receptionist or director of first impressions, the person at the front desk who answers the phone, greets everyone at your office, they are, consistently late every morning. you don't know what's going on. You don't know if there's an issue with their kids. You don't know, if they're having some health issues. You don't really know what's leading to this. But what you do know is because they're not showing up every morning, you're having to answer the phone, which is delaying you to get to your work 30 minutes in and causing you to stay later at work. So we're going to keep a very simple situation, right? And let's say you're going into this conversation and it's just like, hey, Sally, I just wanted to know how important you are to our team. Like, you're that smiling face at the front, you're the happy voice on the phone, and you're really a cheerleader to all of us. And we love that so much about you. However, I've noticed lately you've been coming in late. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why, but here's what I can share. This is affecting me, X, Y, Z. This is why I really encourage you to have bullet points, right? A lot of times you're going to have this conversation and the other person hasn't even thought about how they're affecting you. Sometimes they have issues themselves, which is causing them to violate your boundaries. So they're going to have to go figure those issues out, right? In rare cases, you're dealing with a narcissist or a sociopath, which I don't have the licenses to help you with, right? We'll talk about that in the next part, maintaining boundaries. So if you come up against that situation, that's really the only time this framework does not work in my experience. So you kind of walk through what the problem is, how they're violating your boundary, right? And the more you can say, I feel, or, you're coming in late, and a great, powerful statement is, I choose to feel that you're not valuing my time or what I need to do. So if you say, I choose to feel, it's a pretty powerful statement. So, but what's really important is being open to hearing what Sally has to say, because there could be something you have no clue about. Again, I know this is a fairly simple conversation. Most boundary setting is very difficult, but often it's very difficult to have conversations with team members, right? We spend a lot of time with them. They're often codependent relationships, which is not encouraged, but happens. So you do your XYZ, and the bottom positive is, okay, I hear you. I understand you don't intend to do this. I thank you for having this conversation with me. Moving forward, what are some positive action steps we can take to avoid this? And you're not always going to get buy-in, but if you can get their buy-in to the solution, you're honoring their free will, their autonomy, you're respecting them. And we know once someone takes ownership of something, they are going to stick to it. So that's a pretty high level skill, but at least if you say, hey, going forward, I cannot answer the phone for you the first 30 minutes if you're late, that's still setting a boundary as well. So again, ideally you want to set the action steps together. If not possible, be clear on what action step you intend to set and try to stay calm about it. Here's what happens when you come in with love, like I talked about, like really focusing on their positive qualities. Sometimes you're coming in here, like very loving, they're still going to go here, right? Because they're embarrassed, they're triggered, who knows what's going on. But if they escalate in conversation, you just stay here. It's really that simple. You'll start seeing them come down, right? Sometimes they'll immediately come down. If they will not come down, then you just terminate the conversation and ask to reschedule it for a time that you can have a better talk. You don't have to stay in that conversation, okay? So that's pro hack number 1, use the sandwich conversation. Pro hack number 2 is bicycle language. So when I used to give, many presentations in a month, I always knew the first thing coming out of my mouth when I got in front of the group. Now, I like to flow with the energy of the group, so I'm not always exceptionally scripted. Plus, I'd given this presentation for, 15 years as a financial advisor. So I would kind of flow with it, but I always knew what was coming out of my mouth first. So that's called bicycle language. Or in a certain situation that always comes up with someone, you have bicycle language, how to handle it, right? Which might be like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that. Could I have some time to think about this and get back to you? So you just want to have this language that's almost memorized. And I really, really suggest that when you're going into this boundary conversation or any difficult conversation, know exactly how you're going to start it. Because None of us like these conversations. We're nervous going in. Even if you think you're good at this conversation, you want to make sure you're showing up intentionally in a way that you feel good about. So use bicycle language. And pro hack number 3 is remember to halt. So if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, do not have the conversation. If they come for you at that time, I say for you because if they're being aggressive, or if even someone comes up to you in a graceful way, and you know you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, just say, hey, look, Sally, right now is not the best time to have this conversation. I'm not feeling my best. Could we schedule a time tomorrow so that we can have this conversation? So remember, if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, do not have a difficult conversation. Number 4, how to maintain boundaries. Again, find a way that makes sense for you. What I was taught and feels good to me is the 3-strike rule, right? So I set the boundary with Sally. We agreed with what's going forward. The next week, she comes in late again. Friendly reminder, because this is strike number 1, right? Or maybe it's strike number 2 in your book. Hey, Sally, remember when we talked last week about me not answering the phone for you, blah, blah, blah. You want to remind them you've already had this conversation, right? And so basically you go through that 3 times, and you give them friendly reminders. Hey, this is the second time we're having this conversation. Or, hey, we talked about this twice before. This is our 3rd conversation. I'd really appreciate if we could come up with the solution. So 3-strike rule, friendly reminders that you've had the conversation before. And the 3rd point is if they violate the 3 strikes, there has to be consequences to their actions. I know this is very hard, but if someone's continually violating, then you have to have a consequence. Otherwise, they will continue to do this. So I had a situation before we were working together where my mom would always call me in the middle of the day. And, it was never an emergency. It was just her wanting to get something off her chest or share something with me. And I was like, hey, Mom, I can't talk to you in the middle of the day. It's really distracting for me. We agreed that I'd call her in the morning and in the evening on my way home from work. And then she continued to call me in the middle of the day at the whim. And my coach told me, April, she does that again, you have to tell her you can't talk to her for a week. Luckily, my mom got it before we got to that consequence, but I love to share that story because it's so extreme and most of us can't imagine telling our mother that we can't speak to them for a week. But it's really important because remember, we're trying to keep this person in our lives and we want to show up for them. We just want to show up in a way that looks good to us. So what I want to remind you is healing and progress is not pretty, right? You're basically healing from not having strong boundaries or living your life by other people's boundaries. That's one thing I didn't chat about. Usually we go into life as young adults with the boundaries of our parents, our grandparents, whoever was our biggest impact. As we grow up and become our own person, right, we really should be thinking through what are my boundaries? What's important to me and what do I want to protect, right? So just a friendly reminder that healing and progress looks like a crazy roller coaster, right? Sometimes you're super excited, you're going up and then boom. And sometimes you have a loop-de-loo. Just hang in there. I would really recommend after you have these conversations, don't think about it right away because you're probably tense and you have anxiety. Go work that out of your body. Do something you enjoy. Even if you're at work, go grab a cup of coffee or do something pleasurable right after the conversation. Later that night or the next morning is when you should reflect on the conversation, not immediately, right? Again, just my advice. But remember that healing and progress does not look pretty. So please give yourself grace as you're trying to set boundaries, keep them and maintain them. And I love this quote, everything you ever wanted is on the other side of fear, from George Adair. So just remember, we imagined those ideal interactions. We imagined how we want our life to be. You want to have a compelling purpose so that you set boundaries to protect this life, to protect yourself, your family, people you love, right? So here's what I'd love you to think about when we tune off. And again, these questions are below. What did you love about our time today? Was there one insight that you grabbed onto that you'd really like to implement? So, number one, what did you love about our time today? Number two, what aha did you have? And number three, do you feel that if you were even more consistent in applying that insight to that your life would improve? So, really give this some thought, write it down. Again, a lot of these tips are going to be shared below, so think through them. Think through a situation you have now or you anticipate, or you might want to take these steps and think about a past situation of boundaries, right? Whatever makes sense to you. I'd love to hear your success stories. You can reach out to us at Vixen Gathering on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Please share your comments below. Let us know what you loved and let us know what we can do better. Thank you so much for joining me. I know boundaries are about as fun as taxes to talk about, but I just think it's a critical skill that really changed my life, and I would love to hear your stories. Again, tune in next week where we're going to dive deeper into how to have difficult conversations. Have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.